Hello and welcome to Coffee and Bonsai with Tom. Today we're going to do some summer jade pruning. I think I have 4 of them I'd like to prune. We'll start with this one. And you know, it's got a nice sized trunk. First, let's take a look at this pot. I got this from Brightside Bonsai on Etsy, and I just love the bottom. It has sort of a Frank Lloyd Wright sort of a styling on the bottom edge, and these are just great pots for jade because they're deep, so it makes it hard to overwater them. You know, when you water it, the water just kind of goes straight down through, and there's not a lot left to rot the roots. But let's take a look at the top. You know, I got these, I guess, a little background on this jade while we take a look at it here. You can see it's pretty full and healthy. I got these jades on Etsy as well, and I'd been looking for a long time to try to find you know, this Gollum Jade, ET fingers, lady fingers. You know, they call it by different names, and they're slightly different varieties, but I wanted something with a trunk on it. And I actually found a seller on Etsy, and I messaged him and told him what I was trying to do, and he said, oh yeah, we've got a lot of them. And then I actually found another person who'd gotten these jades from him, and they're great. So I'll put a link to his store there as well. But you can see it's kind of a straight up trunk, and I kind of just want to reduce the height a bit. But you know, I got this jade from Etsy, and I immediately kind of broke it into 3. It was 3 separate plants. They're all were pretty tall, and I kind of, you know, did some pruning on them because they were just really tall and kind of wild, and I created a bonsai forest actually with that. And let me show you that. I'll just insert some video here. So here you can see my Gollum Jade forest, and you know, it looks quite good. It's grown very healthy, and these are all cuttings that I just cut back the tree I just showed you and basically dried out the ends and planted them in this pot as you see it now, and just waited. And I did that in the winter, and it just looks great, you know. So it's really amazing, like from one plant, and I got it sort of late summer, early fall, so I got a really good deal on it. He was clearing his inventory, but you know, you can just create some amazing stuff with a single jade plant. So back to this plant, you know, I think it's just too tall. If I just cover this up, I think that's about the height I want it to be. You know, these Gollum Jades are just great. Like they have sort of a pine look to them, and you get small finger-like cylinder foliage, and you know, they actually can take a bit more water. And as the more I cover this up, I really just want to shorten this down because we have that section on the top is just tall and straight. And, you know, the selling point of this is that trunk, right? And so I really want to kind of get back to that and just reduce anything that's distracting away from the trunk. Like right now, it's just too tall. I mean, it's a beautiful looking jade, but it doesn't really make me think of a tree. So I think that's what we'll do. And, you know, as I said, the Gollum Jade is one of my favorite jades to work with. It's just a fabulous tree to work with as bonsai because the leaves just naturally just look great, and it sort of has an upright growth habit. So you know, you kind of tend to that with pruning, which is what we're going to do today. So strategizing my pruning a bit here as I look at this, you know, I kind of see this as the front. I could just reduce everything back, you know, right to like the first or second segment and regrow, just to bring it much more compact. And, you know, that would be a strategy. But I kind of appreciate the trunk on the left, but it's just sort of too long, and I really want to get the height down to about where my hand is here. I think this will be the new top area. And so I really want to dramatically reduce the height because it's just too tall, and I think it'll just be a much more convincing specimen if we do that. So I think I'm going to do that. You know, a lot of folks ask me, well, when is the best time to work on some of these trees? And I always say, the best time is when I have time. And I've literally pruned these things heavily any season, and it hasn't been a problem. So I think, you can do it at any time. With the caveat that if you do it in the winter, you probably want light. And, when it's actively growing, it'll obviously recover much more quickly. But I found with just a few caveats, you can pretty much prune these at any time. In fact, the caveats, the main things I kind of get concerned about are, these jades have very little natural resistance to, bacteria or viruses. So when you open up a wound, particularly if it's going to be wet, like in the soil, you really want to make sure that that wound is dried up and skinned over before you get it wet. And the same thing if you're making cuts, particularly large cuts like on branches and whatnot. And I usually, I just keep them dry, out of rain, don't water them, in sort of bright light, shade, mostly shade for about 2 or 3 days, and then they pretty much skin over, and at that point it's quite safe. So let's get to work here. He who hesitates is lost. Got my pruners here, which I like to use for these kind of big cuts. And let me just take one final look, and let's take it off. I'm going to take it off at a nice angle right here, and it's a large cutting, so I like to sort of hold it with one hand and gently kind of lean it back, because it takes me quite a few cuts to get through the whole thing. And I want it to be clean. I don't want it torn or anything. And there we go. So look at that nice big cutting, and that'll make a beautiful tree in and of itself, and we will propagate that. And the tree is certainly now shorter. So I'll just clean this up with my scissors a bit. I try to get it, quite flat. And, you can do this later. What I found is, since I have more green above where I'm cutting here, it tends to heal very quickly, and I can cut closer. And I think it's because, you've got sap. You've got stuff going through there higher up in the plant, so it's happy to heal that. And I probably should have my knob cutters or concave cutters or something, but I just, kind of get it pretty good with this. And like I said, even once it's healed, you can always kind of, re-injure it and flatten it out later. But, I try to do a reasonable job, kind of as we're going, and that looks pretty good. And that is about the height I want for the tree there. And I think I'm going to also remove this to the right kind of drastically, because it's, I want some height differential in these branches, so I'm going to cut that back right there. And, that'll be the new lowest branch. And similarly, I'm going to cut this back. So I want a lot more back budding, and this is a healthy tree. It will shoot out new branches quite quickly. And I'm also going to take this off, because this will sort of be the new top back branch, at least temporarily, until we see how things are going. And as I look at this, I'm not too happy with that right branch. It's just kind of odd looking there. Hanging off the right, and it's kind of almost, when it grows in, it'll sort of be a bar branch with the one on the left. And I've also, you can see I've cut it a couple times there already, and there's a long segment right below where I cut. So I think I'm going to shorten that right down, but let me clean up this top first. You sort of want to reduce things out to going from one branch to 2 branches, which we now have going on the top there. And, you can see this is a bit, can be cleaned up a bit more, really flatten it out. As I said before, I think I mentioned, it's sort of safe to do because I have foliage above this point, and so it tends to heal rather quickly. And like I said, keep it in bright light, but not direct sun for a couple days till this skins over, because I have seen horrible things happen when you get very intense sunlight on a wound like this, it'll just sort of like pucker up and just look terrible. But back to this point here. Yeah, it really just bothers me, and so yeah, I'm gonna stick with the philosophy of if it bothers you, just cut it off and get rid of it. And you know, usually that leads to a happier result. I just want to figure out where I want to take this off. Yeah, I think that'll do it right there. And to me, that looks a lot better. And we've left a little bit of room. I'm not sure which direction the branches will come out here, but we will work with it either way. And that's about it. So, you know, took a lot off, but it looks good. So next up, we have a very similar tree. This is one of the ones that, you know, this was part of that large plant that came that I separated. And I mean, I've literally created probably 10 trees from this one purchase. And let's look at this pot. This is also from Brightside Bonsai, and I call this my Orange Julius pot. Just look at that. It's quite beautiful. It's like kind of like yellow and orange. And again, it's a great pot to grow a jade in. Because of its depth. So much like the first plant, you know, it's a nice looking jade, right? It's a nice looking plant. It has a nice trunks. It has nice color. It's starting to develop some character at the base. And especially this one has a lot more branches, right? But you can see it's pretty tall. And you know, it just doesn't look like a tree, right? And so, and it has actually 2 nice trunks, but, you know, I'm not sure they work particularly well together. So that's part of my thinking when I'm thinking about the pruning strategy here. And then also, you know, it has just a lot of long, straight sections, which will easily bud back. I mean, these you can basically cut this anywhere, and the next segment down will almost certainly, you know, come out with new leaves, assuming the tree is healthy. And that's probably something I should always mention in these videos. Like, if your tree is unhealthy and weak looking, you know, don't prune it. Get it robust before you start manipulating it. You know, also, as I look at this, there's this section at the top of the left trunk here that just, you know, it just doesn't look good. So I think that's also something I definitely want to address with in working on this, for sure. Well, he who hesitates is lost. Let's get to cutting here before I lose my nerve. I think this is just too long. I don't like it. I'm just going to take it off. You know, that'll make a nice little tree for somebody. And similarly on the left here, like, this is just too much. So I'm going to take that way back. And it's already looking better. I'm going to thin this out a bit. Not exactly sure what I'm going to do with these 2 lower, I mean, they almost look like lower trees, right? But let me just thin out some of the foliage here. I tend to, when I'm cutting roots, I leave as much foliage as possible because it uses it to regrow roots, but I'm not doing anything to the roots today, so you just have at the whole tree and it will bounce back rather quickly. And yeah, thin this out as well. So I think this is a bit better. I'm going to cut this back a bit further. You know, I'm still not crazy happy with it, so I'm just going to keep working. I feel like I need to get a little bolder. Like, there's this problem here on the left that I mentioned before. It's just kind of a mess up there, I feel. You know, it's just not a pleasing part. I'm going to shorten this back. There's some long stuff still that I feel with more compact growth, it'll just give us more options. So I'm going to, you know, cut back a bit and encourage the tree to do some back budding and give us some more branch options to work with there. And as I look at this here is, I'll clean the top up. a bit, but it's, you know, it's not a bad looking trunk. It has a nice movement to it, you know, especially compared to the trunk on the left. Let's just take a closer look here, see how that's growing. Oh, had a little earwig in there. You know, I don't know, hopefully he's doing some good. Yeah, so this part right here just really bothers me, and I think we're just going to take it off. Let's take it off. And I don't think it'll be any worse, right? And so I'll take it off right there. And yeah, I mean, I think that cleaned up certainly the problem that was poking me right in the eye. So that definitely has kind of reduced some of the height. And, you know, as I look at these tiny trees on the side, you know, you sort of want, I guess it's called the rule of 1/3, you know, where you want the trunk to be about 1/3 of the height of the tree. And so these are just long and straight, and I'm just going to cut them back, and we'll get some new branching, and, you know, we'll see where that goes. You know, we may or may not even need these, although, you know, I kind of like them. But, you know, at least that's sort of in scale with, you know, what I'm going for here. A thought just occurred to me. If you look at this, it looks like an upside down pair of pants, you know, like someone's standing on their head buried up to the waist. You got the two legs up in the air and the waist near and I'm just taking it off. We're going to be bold and reduce this. I just don't like those two trunks. They don't work together. And let me clean this off a bit, and we will see how this looks. I think that's definitely better. I mean, I'm glad I made that cut, but it's still, you know, still looks like a pair of pants in the ground. Upside down, of course. So let's see. I'm thinking about, you know, I really like the movement of that taller trunk. But I think it's too tall. Let me cut this off, take this a little bit shorter, because I think it'll look better. It'll take away that pants look. Yeah, that is much better right there for sure. I think maybe the issue I have now though is, like, I mean, I like the rest of the tree, but sort of the main trunk now, though it has a nice movement and look to it, is too tall. And you got to think too, like, you know, this is really going to grow, and I'm going to develop new branches that are going to be a lot higher. And I think I mentioned the 1/3 rule before, and honestly, I feel like whatever I end up with here is probably going to be about 1/3 of the complete height of the ending tree. So you don't want to start too tall, because invariably the tree is going to end up being taller than you think. So you're better off kind of undershooting it a bit. And so I think I've just talked myself into cutting this back. And of course, now, you know, we've taken it back to stumps now. But I tell you, I am much happier with the results. And when this grows in, I think it is going to be vastly superior to what we had before. Let me refocus the camera. And yeah, you can see we've basically got 4 stumps here, but I find this more charming than what we started with, so I'm very happy with it. So next up, we have another overgrown jade here. This is a little jade. It was a cutting, you know, it had no roots. I just threw it in this little pot as an experiment, and it really took off. I mean, I have pruned this several times already. Never really been, you know, all that happy with it. You can see it's got a big wound there in the back. You know, I've kind of got this lower branch here on the right, and the top has kind of a bar branch up there, and is, you know, certainly needs to be cleaned up. But I mean, I would probably have to take this branch off. But there's no branching in the middle, and, you know, it's kind of a straight, not so interesting trunk. Like, I thought about making it a literati, so just cut off that bottom branch and just work on the top and do something interesting up there. But that's never really been a style that does much for me. So I'd rather just put this in a pot and give it away than create something I'm not that into. So that's one option. But you know, that's an option. You know, I could just cut it all back to 2 to 3 sets of leaves and let it get bushier and see what happens. Because I think if I had a branch coming out in the middle there to the left or the right, which I'm sure there are branches or there are buds there that are dormant, like I could somehow make that happen. Or you know, I could also just cut it way back and regrow the top. Or do something even more bold and just go with that lower limb as the tree. You know, I mean, it already has some interesting character to it. You know, it's got a branch that could be the new leader, and it's got, you know, left, right, and back branches. And I think it would probably be a better sizing for this pot. I mean, this is kind of a small pot. Yeah, you know, pruning is always about decisions, just lots and lots of decisions, right? And it's times like this I need to remember, you know, it's hard to really make a mistake, you know, like, because if you don't cut enough, you can always cut more in the future. And if you cut too much, it's going to keep growing, you know. So he who hesitates is lost, and I think I'm just going to go with my instincts, which say cut this baby way back and create, you know, something that fits better with the pot. And, you know, I may have to change the angle here. But I think this has a chance to be kind of charming or interesting as a tree, whereas the stuff I just cut away in combination with this, I just don't. It's an uphill battle. I don't think it was going to work at all. And I'll throw that cutting into, I have a flower pot. I just grow those things and we'll see what happens. But let's take a look at this and give it a quick prune to get it on its way. I'm just going to kind of thin it back and cut it back a bit and try to give it a triangular shape and get things kind of growing in the right direction. But I'm not going to do too much because, you know, this is really early on in this tree's kind of life, and we're just looking to give it clear directions about which direction we want it to grow in. And already I think this is looking quite a bit better. Yeah, this is actually quite charming, and yeah, I think we've made some good changes to this, and you know, as I said, I'm way happier with what I have here than sort of that overgrown monstrosity that we just dealt with. And I can see this kind of growing out that direction and out the back. I mean, it's already got leaves and branches in all the right places, and it just needs time to grow and put on growth and to develop. And yeah, I think this one is, you know, went from not such a great tree to something I'm actually kind of excited about now. So last but not least, I have this little jade here. It's in a very tiny pot. I think this is like maybe an under 3-inch pot. It's an Iker pot. I think he's out of Ohio. Iker Bonsai, Google on that, and he's got some really nice pots. You can see this one is just kind of a beautiful sort of a matte mottled yellow, and it's really small. This tree's, I don't know, I think I did this one around the same time as the one we just pruned, and it was the same thing. I just put a cutting in here. And this one I just want to prune back. I've just been letting it grow and cutting it back and letting it grow, and you know, it's just kind of slowly evolving, and the goal is just to tune it up and, you know, cut it back to 1 to 2 sets of leaves, and then just keep on growing it and see where we end up. You know, sometimes I grow these trees like this little one here I don't know, for a while, and then I'll put them into a forest because they just call out to me, and it just seems like they should go in the forest. Or, sometimes I just keep them in here. But they're very fun to grow, and, jades are so easy to care for that, having a plant in a very small pot like this is not, laborious. It's pretty easy to keep them alive and healthy. And yeah, this one is looking pretty tuned up. So that's about it for today. And the parting thought as I finish this one up is, share the love. Jades are so prolific and so easy to care for and to propagate. And people just love getting them as gifts. I cannot tell you how many times I've taken cuttings and given them to friends and family, and they're always appreciated. And, they're the good luck plant. So make and share jade. I promise you people will really like them. And with that, I want to say thank you for spending time with me. And I look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon.